Am I gonna go viral, Miss Renee? What if we had someone be a guest and they're like, "Can I go viral?"
We're like, good luck. You may be missing your calling.
I already need to pee. We're having Moro coffee.
Moro coffee
Moro
today.
coffee.
Hey, cheers to Moro coffee.
Cheers.
So tell me about your day so far, Anna Gray.
Wow.
Was it emotional?
Emotional is an understatement.
Yeah.
We both cried,
Oh, no, we
screamed,
didn't. We didn't scream or cry.
convulsed,
We didn't do any of
had a
this.
Pentecostal breakdown. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Slain by...
I don't think we were saying.
No,
well, we had a charcuterie board.
I have learned a lot today.
You did.
I think that today is one that will go down in the books as far as technology goes.
I do too.
I formatted a bunch of memory cards. We were going to record this podcast approximately 2 hours ago, and then all the cards were full. And then I couldn't figure out how to format the memory card on the Sony. So I then formatted it. I forgot I could do that on the laptop.
Yes.
So I erased a bunch of
So I reminded
data.
you. I'm joking.
You do have good
nothing.
reminders.
No, all I do is
I'm
do.
not offended.
No, I actually just have.
Miss Renee.
I say I think I have a card reader. I think I know where there's a
Yes,
trick.
she saved the day.
No, I didn't.
You
because-
and Lily.
Yes, there.
You both did because you had a card reader
Yeah.
and a hard drive and
A
Lily,
2 trigaton.
2 terabytes. Wow, sounds like geometry.
I was thinking
I
that.
get my hairband off. Wonder if this could
But so it was. Oh yeah, aim the camera.
Oh.
So it was an emotional day.
but not like in a cry fest kind of way. More like time crunch. Let's get this done.
wanted to-
But we learned a lot.
Yeah.
How
You
was
know,
your day?
Well, no. I think what was
You
the
like
driving
shake
force behind
coffee.
us is that we're trying to be more intentional
Yeah.
about scheduling in our lives.
Yep.
Because
September's crazy.
because you're doing a marathon in October and life is happening with me. I have things I'm doing.
Yep. Your book.
So yes. So we were trying to schedule, and the frustrating thing was everything was going wrong.
Yeah,
Plus,
it was.
I decided to try to change decor
It's all right.
in the beginning, and
It's okay. There's the remnants of
yes,
it.
Oh, it is. I need to pull that off there so it doesn't get stabbed.
It is pretty. It
'cause
reminds me of Starry Night.
I have beautiful.
Van
I
Gogh.
do have beautiful art. I really do.
She does.
So we were going to talk about emotions. So actually, instead of talking about them, we decided to live them.
We did. We
Yeah.
had an actual simulation of what it's like to have emotion.
Have real emotions. And the reason we put this on our list to talk about was
This was your idea.
Yes,
It was
this-
brilliant, though.
it was brilliant and it was really heartfelt. And then we kind of got wrapped up in other things. But I have a loved one who's going through some emotional issues and mental things. So I Googled, what was it I Googled? I Googled, I Googled, sayings on emotions and scriptures on emotions. And I didn't really do the sayings one. I just went straight to scripture because I'm a Christian. So the scriptures, all the scriptures were, it was about lust and killing people and stealing.
We made
and
naked statues in the Roman times to depict this.
it was all these things. And then, it didn't say anything about your profane cussing or anything. No, I'm joking.
The thorn in my flesh.
I know. I understand. I've had that too. But no, it was all those sins, and it wasn't even about her, her headspace. How about what having a sound mind and body, which the Lord says a lot about having a sound mind. And the only reason I Google scriptures is because sometimes you're too tired to recall. And you're like, okay, I'll go to the Google. And I will say the people who've memorized scriptures, and I have memorized a whole lot, they have a heads up. But there are days when you do have memorized scripture, and you're just exhausted, and you reach for the Google. You just reach for the Google because you're tired. And so I reached for it. And so this is what came up, and I was really disappointed. I was like, no. Tell me we know what the Lord says. He has plenty to say about the mind. But just give me a.
Did you feel like they were demonizing like negative emotions?
Yes,
or only
it
talking
was
about,
all,
or not even demonizing. I don't want to say negative emotions, but opposite of joy, peace, etc. And making it sound like,
he comes to kill. I mean, the only thing I could come up with, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy, which we used in our last segment. But I couldn't come up with any. I couldn't come up. Oh, I just came up with it. Romans 12 about transforming your mind. I couldn't. I was so exhausted. I couldn't come up with that. Renewing your mind kind of emotions. It was all the things that we would say the 5-star ones.
Just slamming all emotions that don't seem quote unquote positive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't they were just telling you what you're doing wrong, which is absolutely wonderful. And obviously the Bible does this wonderfully, but the memes were not doing these so great because they weren't telling you, they weren't mentioning the Romans 12 thing, transforming
or any sort
your
of
mind.
tools in which to take captive your emotions.
And take captive your,
realize you own them, they don't own you.
And I mean, all that is in the Bible.
Yeah.
So I found that very fascinating and very disheartening, because I think about the people who are in similar situations who are really, really trying to rewire
their brain,
repaper their brains with and I don't want to use the word positivity.
I know what you mean,
but with positive thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm not using it in the new age that way, but to change your thought pattern. And so I was thinking, why is that? Why are we doing that to people? Because they're hurting people all over the place.
Like making it seem like, their struggle with their emotions means something is inherently wrong with them and everything's wrong with the emotion they're experiencing, versus tools to almost like self-regulate and come out of that place to where it's not. Because, how I think of emotions personally is it like almost as though it's a palette, because I don't think any one particular emotion, I forget how many emotions there clinically are within like the brain, and how we experience them, but they're not like even the ones that are supposedly negative or demonized, like anger, sadness, they're not bad emotions, but it's, I think, in how they're used. And I mean, there's even a time and place for joy, like if someone's grieving, or if you're at a funeral, or if you're experiencing something somber, there's a time and place where you should probably shut up with the positive vibes only. And
Ecclesiastes says that.
Psalms, Ecclesiastes, yes. And I think there's a time and place for all of them. I think it's like we have a palette of them. They're all, I think it's healthy for them to experience. But the problem lies when I think you allow the emotion to, and believe that it takes ownership over you and there's no way out.
Yes.
And this could go on either end of the spectrum, because you have even the new age, like, positive vibes only, where it's stay happy. There's, if you're not happy, and even Christian culture can kind of mimic this a lot. It's like, well, you just don't have enough faith, joys in the Lord. And it's like, but give me some concrete examples of that, because it is not, like, Jesus wept. Jesus turned tables.
Jesus suffered.
Yes. It's like, if you read the Psalms, like, the psalmist is constantly literally constantly back and forth with grieving and tearing his robes and feeling and praying almost these prayers as though they feel forsaken, and then like worshiping God.
And they always come out that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like a diary of the Bible.
It is really, it's being honest with the Lord, coming to the Lord, presenting how you feel, being true. And then in that, you've been heard, and the Lord, your response to Him is to praise Him as a holy God. I am concerned that those were the top rated. I scrolled and I just finally gave up, and I just went, I will just give her the best scriptures I possibly can remember, because there, again, you do have times, but it was really.
Was she dealing with like? What like emotion would you say was like being dealt with that you were trying to help with?
negativity, doubts,
Like
fears,
pessimism, fears. Okay.
definitely fears,
Yeah.
fear of failure, and all this. But of course, again, I've mentioned him 2 times in a row now. Randy Alcorn and his blog came, and it was on him. I just went, okay, what would Randy Alcorn say? So it really helped me because he said, look, these are all normal.
Yep.
We all have them. It's what we do with them.
I agree. Yes.
And then, so I'm thinking, why are we memeing all these other ones and not memeing,
Do you think that, and I'm speaking more for the church, generally speaking, versus secular culture, because I think even secular culture, honestly, has started to get it better than a lot of, I don't want to even generalize the church when I say this, but there can, and I've experienced this, like when I've expressed real fears of mine or things I'm going through even, and it's like deeply still having faith.
Right.
But being honest, is there a gnat?
There's a gnat.
I saw it buzzing by and glistening in the light. Do you need a fan?
I need my
Do you need my
fan.
Amazon Prime gloves?
I need
fan
my fly fan that I ordered.
Okay, I'm sorry for the table. She's experiencing the emotion
I'm
of.
actually experiencing laughter.
I'm about to choke.
Because I love the unexpected, and that's why I like our podcast to be so real, because it happens.
This is real life right here. We
Yeah.
choke on our coffee and tea.
Yeah.
We choked on tea a lot earlier today.
We have.
We have
but
gnats.
you were in the midst of a really good.
Well, I have experienced real human emotions in which, actually, there was a conversation I had once where, and this is with a believer, where I was expressing a genuine fear and something where I wasn't dwelling on it even, but I think it's natural. Like, for example, if you have a fear that if someone's watching you or preying on you, it's legitimate to have fear, and we're pre-programmed with the instinct to run from it.
Right.
It's when we use it in the wrong way.
Right.
So there's a situation where it was a legitimate fear, and I was something I was navigating, and it wasn't even something I was dwelling on, obsessing over, and someone basically told me, like, suck it up. There's no point even thinking about it. It doesn't matter. And I was telling someone else, but Jesus also wept and turned tables. I'm not saying I'm just going to go turning tables and mimic every single thing like Jesus said in righteous anger. But like he also experienced these same human emotions, if that makes sense. And they weren't, I think that it's easy for them to be demonized because people think that if you don't always have a smile on your face and you're not almost this level of perfection in your faith, that if you go through a season of doubt even, or a season of even grief or, despair, sadness, anxiety, depression, which again, those aren't places to stay, but it's also people's lives and what's happening to them shouldn't have to be rationalized, if that makes sense. Because I think people also, and I see a lot of church culture do this too, like in small groups, and I also have experienced this, like, will tend to one-up people's pain and suffering. Now, if you, for example, if it's something like, I don't know, you wish you could travel somewhere or go to Disney World and it's just not happening, that's not exactly pain and suffering. Right. Like there's some things that are indeed very materialistic, but other things where it's like, it's things that have happened to you and it's a hardship and that someone's experiencing or you're experiencing. And when people one up it with, well, people have it way worse than this, or, well, be glad. And I've had people, even in one of my hardest seasons, tell me, well, there are children dying in Africa. There are people with cancer. I'm like, I understand this. And I don't, it's not that I think, and what I gone through at the time was as bad, but it's like, that doesn't suddenly equate that it's still not hard, or that it's hard,
Well, your mother Laura, who seems to make it. One day we'll have to interview her because she
came on the phone one day and
she
grilled
did.
me.
Oh my goodness!
In a good way.
No, we need to have an interview with her.
Yeah, we should.
But she's always one to correct mine. I'll say this doesn't really matter, but I need to mention this. And she'll go, Renee, at this point, it is important
Yep.
to you. Is it equated to someone in a jail overseas? No. But this is what you are experiencing in the here and now. You need to talk about it. But I think the point you're trying to make, I hear two things, and I think it's interesting. In a way, secular or non-secular, we can have a prosperity ministry about emotions.
Yes.
And think that we always have to be happy clappy.
Yeah.
I heard that first time when I went to Wales. I was with this group, and I guess I was a happy clappy kind of person. That we always have to be happy clappy, which is not living authentically.
Yep.
Or on the dark side of that, the other side of that, and I never mentioned this to you before. Your mother said to me one time, as she was raising me, into my Christian walk, and she very gently just said, and I think she was acted like she was talking in the third person, like, there's just some people, they just always have to know. The only thing they ever talk about is spiritual things. And they have to know, it's always dark and deep and heavy, and not just dark, but light, dark versus light, heavy and theological. And I think she was hitting me because that was me at one point. I wasn't, when I first became a Christian, I wasn't a laugher. I was like, okay, this is serious. I've got to get serious about my life. And, I dug in, and then it wasn't until, I don't know when, that I learned one of the most spiritual, joyful things I can do is just have the heartiest laugh.
Yeah.
And so I've laughed more in the last, I don't know how many years.
We laughed for like 10 minutes earlier right before the intro.
Really, when things are really bad, you laugh sometimes. And even in the midst of
True
pain and grief, you do laugh. But so I think we've made emotions so bad emotions, good emotions.
Yep.
And
to where it's not something you just naturally experience as they come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, I also feel the question we also had, and the question I had for you is, how do we ever use them? The deal is, in my conversations with some men, we take in material way different. It's a different way, and there's that Nat. Hello, Mr.
Women
Nat.
from versus men.
Yes.
Oh,
but
right.
How do we know as women when we're being, I don't want to say over emotional, but when we're relying on our emotions too much instead of using
feels based.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because if we're doing feelings. I know there's a lot of times I have to say, okay, this is my emotions. That doesn't mean this is logical or true.
Yeah. I think anytime you strip logic first,
yes,
because I think that you can get like a feeling about something. I do think women are very intuitive because sometimes logic follows emotion. Like, for example, when you have like a bad feeling about a situation, it's like, I think that's a motherly instinct maybe, but I 1000%. I used to surround myself with like overly emotional people, and I try not to anymore. I love people who are open and honest and real about their emotions, but not who live in this really scary, overly charismatic. I'm just speaking like denominationally charismatic, but kind of way. Because I think anytime someone becomes too feels based is when they allow their emotions to dub something as truth versus logic and reasoning and evidence.
There you go. That's a bingo moment.
If that makes sense.
Say it again.
Anytime you strip the evidence and truth and logic first, and you allow your emotions to only be the
driving
piece that
force.
drives you, I think when they're coupled together, that's great, because I think emotion with logic, and same with conversations with people, and I've seen this in men and women, when you allow emotions to steer something, whether good or bad, even emotions that are considered otherwise good. I used to surround myself by highly manipulative women, actually, who would even claim like the Lord told them these things about me, or I think I meant to do this great task with you, and God has this plan. I'm like, I used to take that as,
For $15,000.
sometimes, join my team, and sell this to 20 people and rein them in the cult, and then maybe. But I very much did, and we're talking like pushing on a decade ago. I really did surround myself with people who turn out to be highly manipulative, because I think that's what emotions can do when you're fueled by that and logic and truth are not really in the equation. And I'm talking about believers here too. So anytime these types of people pop up in my life, I get this almost like really repulsed feeling in my stomach.
You say, but what happens? How do you figure out if you're susceptible to that?
I think that you sometimes I learn by experiencing the downfall of it. And when I get to points where I felt used, manipulated, when I've given a lot of my time or resources, or when just really strong boundaries are crossed that I didn't kind of instill in the first place, or things asked of me to where it feels like a lot. What I've noticed the pattern becomes in those situations for me personally is where it's honestly like these people are supposedly loving, but their love comes at a cost. It's always this constant, oh, well, you owe me something. You owe me something. The highly emotional people, or they don't show up on time. They turn out to be just, in my opinion, I don't want to say terrible people because that's pretty strong, but they really don't know how to regulate their emotions enough to where that doesn't, I don't know if they can even differentiate the Holy Spirit from emotions, if I'm being honest. Right. So I think logic and emotions are both great. I think anytime you are only stoically logical and you completely eradicate the idea of experiencing sadness, grief, or opening up yourself, like allowing yourself to be kind of cracked and real with people, then I don't want to say you become subject to like stoicism, but like kind of in a way. But also if you strip away logic and you're only fueled by emotions, then I think it's equally a slippery slope either way.
And you think about Jesus and his walk through this earth. What a great, perfect role model. Because he did these so well. And we're going to mess him up. But I think what it was is, we mentioned that the last time, it's grace and truth. It's authentic. He's authentic. I always like to see pictures or movies that show him laughing, because I think they make him, all the pictures always very, very serious. Yeah. When, you read and even his parables point to, he's the original environmentalist. He's talking about, he's talking about all sorts of lands and fishes and, God is the original.
He's way better than Al Gore.
Yes, he's really very much better.
Repeat that.
It's very much better. I don't know. Your mother's going to bleep that on the grammar scene. But I think if we were to model something like that and have a balance and pray for balance and look for those moments when we're unbalanced. But that does require awareness of what's going on in our lives. And I think sometimes we're living in a world where it is modeled for us a different way. Like the conversations that we have to go hyper crazy. Right. And everything has to go, I'm right, you're wrong. We can't talk about it. I was doing something with Lily on her English, and it was talking about how to have an argumentative discussion. Well, paper. And it says, you always listen to people, then you present your points. And then the third thing was you don't come to agreement, but you recognize that there are different sides to the story, but you've proven your points in a very gracious way. They said it a lot better, and it was very succinct. But I think we've lost that.
And it's just a hyper emotional response. Yes. Well, I think it's interesting
It's either hyper logical or hyper emotional, which you were talking about. Right. There's no middle. Sometimes there's no middle ground. And I think everything we're reading is either. I love it. You know, I read stuff on energy, love, Doomberg, on Substack. Oh, they moved off of Substack, but they're great. But it's all about energy. But they do it in such an engaging, beautiful way that, you know, I mean, they make fossil fuels sexy. They make talking about nuclear energy and uranium, or whatever they're talking about, you know, even, you know, the energy crisis. They do it in such an engaging way, even when they're doing podcasts, that it's both informational, but it's also enjoyable.
So it's like the best of both worlds.
It's the best of both worlds. And if they can do that on energy, imagine what we could do in our lives on, you know, politics and
well, I think even with a lot of social issues, even like it's interesting because now this is really political. I think this is really more humanitarian, but the transgender movement, that's radically emotional.
Right.
And it's like glorifying people mutilating themselves, but also on the flip side of the spectrum, I think that in a lot of Christian communities, so I grew up in the homeschool culture, which I love being homeschooled, and there's a lot of wonderful things about it and people, but there are a lot of ways in which parents, I would see them discipline their kids in which it was almost stripping them of their emotions, like just be calm, be happy all the time. Even if you have some great success, or even if something really exciting happens, it's not that it was, I don't think inherently expressed, don't show emotion, but it's almost like dumbing kids down to like, all right, just be like pleasant, be even kill, have a smile on your face,
be a Stepford
and
wife.
stuff everything down. Yeah. So it's like these, again, radical, but interestingly, it's seeing a lot of children who are products of that, which I've seen in a lot of different ways. I've seen it even as a young adult now. And just observing kids' behavior, how they're parented on the side of, you know, obviously children need discipline, and boundaries, but how to not strip them of emotions too, to where they grow up stuffing everything down or reacting in such a way that because they grew up in this, I don't want to say brainwashing environment, but sometimes I think you can even use the Bible and spirituality and use that to manipulate children into thinking like, oh, well, you expressed anger, that's a terrible thing, or you, again, it's how
instead of showing them how.
Because I remember Mom always told me growing up, because I was the most strong-willed, stubborn child ever, but something.
I heard stories. I just heard.
You knew me as a strong.
You were not like that to me, but I know that your mother would not mind me saying this. Is that she would bring it as a prayer request.
I was the prayer request.
Every week, like
a very trying child, but she would tell. And I'm sure you heard this from her too, that like she didn't want to break my strong will.
I love that.
Yes, because it can be used, and I think that's
and that's what she saw. She saw the big long picture,
and she told me she was just recently telling this 7-year-old this too. She said I cut my hands around her face, and I told her that one day her strong will is going to be used for good or something like that.
And it's funny. Now, settle down.
Well, it's true because you don't want to. And I know this isn't all about just children we're talking about, but I'm just saying in a lot of environments and how, like, the church, a lot of people in Christian church culture view emotions almost in the really, what's the word I'm looking for? Strong emotions, you could say, that they're otherwise bad. Because, like, children shouldn't be able to do whatever, whenever, however, but teaching people, and if people were taught that their emotions, there's a time and place for them, but it's how they're handled, ultimately, truly, and it becoming this transformation where your emotions don't own you and control you, which is how it can so often feel, because you want to react so like in such a big way.
Except for your mother, who waits eons. She's the only person I know, but you and I are like, we just want to say this, we just want to say it now.
Well, sometimes that, but even just in people overexpressing anger or sadness or living in it. And I think in even today's culture, like glamorizing depression, anxiety, like everyone has to be diagnosed with something, which I feel like I would get so stoned for saying that in public, but it's almost like people want to have something wrong with them because that's like the sexy thing now, when really even... I know there's clinical depression, there's clinical anxiety, but even still, anytime you put a label with something, that gives it this like almost hall pass for, oh, well, you can't help it. No. Like you can help actually. You can't necessarily help the things that happen to you and sometimes your brain chemistry, but I do believe you can actually take ownership and responsibility for your actions. Enforcing yourself to make choices that are life-giving, even when you feel like everything else is life sucking, if that makes sense. And I think that people often use emotions as like kind of an excuse for things, or, oh, well, I was diagnosed with this, therefore. It's like, no, if you're a functioning citizen of society and you're, you know, independent, you're an adult. Right. You know? You're an adult. And
that's what I told all my kids when they turned 18. I said, you're 18 now. Guess what? You can vote. You can also go to jail. You know, I mean, and I can't help you. You know, these are the facts of what goes on. I think I think maybe this is where our society is again playing helicopter people. Is where we're trying to protect. You know what it is? It does. I'm reminded of Eureka. Well, yeah, I did. Because it's so much, and I see it carried on into the younger generation, the much younger generation. It was the same thing that your mother and I had in the older generation, and we always would talk about it. As moms, you know, and my mother, same thing. She didn't talk about it, but I knew it. We are a reflection on our parents, and therefore when we are misbehaving, it makes them look bad. And we are being, you know, when we're saying yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, or yes, sir. I know my mom came to me one time when I was young. And she, you know, she said, so-and-so said your manners in the car were so wonderful. You said yes, sir, and no, sir. And he just loved them. And my mother was as pleased as punch. And I'm happy for her because I was raised that way. You know, you say yes, sir, you do that. But you know, anything that I did was a reflection on them. Anything,
as in you felt that in your
I felt that, I knew heart. That, you know. And then I noticed when I had kids, I was like, wow, this is really easy to be concerned about how my kids are acting in public and how it reflects on me as a parent. It is so very easy. And the battle still rages.
Right.
You know, the deal is our kids are going to have tantrums. You know, what are we going to do about it? You know, are we going to let them have it? Or are we going to walk out of the store and say, no, you can't have the bubblegum candy machine. And I'm sorry, you can throw the fit all you want, and we're just going to go straight to the car.
Well, I think it's like teaching them boundaries with emotions, too. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is as we grow up is, you know, our 5, 10, 15-year-old selves can still reemerge if we haven't learned to get a grip on this stuff. And I don't think it's just, oh, we can only learn in childhood and that's it. Absolutely not. But if it's learned behavior, and if it's just something that has been deemed as normal, whether it's being overly emotional with no boundaries and sabotaging everyone, and there's a reason you probably have no friends, or you keep not making friends, or you like have one friend,
and that's a shallow friendship,
right? And it's surface level, or you are, you know, you stuff everything down and you take it out in all the wrong ways, and you can't quite identify it. So again, I think it's a lot of self-awareness too. People can, it's learned behavior to me, but I think, again, and the idea that you're in control of your emotions at the end of the day, things you feel, you might not necessarily, that's more of, I think, an instinctive process, but in how you handle it and where you take it in your mind. And I think also being open with other people too, because there's a lot of hush-hush topics and culture, which I think nowadays we're starting to be
so open.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'm like,
sometimes radically so.
Do we really have to talk about this?
Well, I was actually told by a dear friend that perhaps I overshared on Facebook because I asked him, I said, do I seem like, if you didn't know me, would I seem secular? Because I want to know, like, because he was describing this, like, interesting dynamic he had seen. And I had this thought, wow, if he's this observant with these situations, and I wasn't looking for flattery, but I thought, what would my observations be? And yeah, like, completely on the open end of the spectrum, because, like, I love talking about emotions, and I'm probably an overly emotional person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I blog,
learning.
that's what I talk about. I talk about history. I talk about, life and how it wraps up. I don't know what to say about that. Except for I do think, I mean, to say I think, that's one of our banned words, but there's a lot of people who need to hear that other people are experiencing this.
Yeah.
And that is the goodness of it, that you're not alone. The deal is, at the end of the day and at the end of your shares, you talk about how this situation, whatever you're going through, becomes life-giving.
Yeah.
And I think as long as you're pulling it to that, but if it just stays dark, if it just stays negative, I mean, in the end, we are here to shine light in darkness. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, it was interesting. They weren't fully like,
I do think people need to know, who are dependent on drugs and alcohol, or other. There's anything you can be dependent on. It could be porn or whatever.
True.
When you quit it. This is what happened when I was 39, and this is what I'm going to say about emotions. I was shocked. I was so shocked the first time at 39 years old, having drank since I was 14.
14?
Yes, for 20.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I'm not saying that to judge you.
Should I do the math? Is that 25 years? But no, I was shocked, utterly shocked, having to go through this situation, and I went, oh. This is what an emotion feels like.
Whoa, because you felt numb for so long?
I had medicated so long that I was like, oh my goodness.
I get that.
It was shocking to me. And so at this point, hey, sweetie, can you wait a second?
The flip-flops of wrath.
It was just emotionally, I couldn't believe it. And so what I'm saying to all of us who have been dependent, and then we stop to recognize that emotions are real, but they're also okay.
That's really good.
But
so
we
deep.
need to talk them through with somebody, because they are new to us.
Yeah.
Because we've been medicated.
Did you
for
want
years.
to feel numb, or did it just happen because you were coping by drinking?
It was a coping. It's a coping mechanism. You don't know that you're shutting down your emotions.
I used to be a really numb person too, though.
Yes.
Which is funny because now I say I'm an overly feely person.
Well, sometimes we feel right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But when I was 17, I remember, like, I would journal so often, and I still will sometimes go through my, like, angsty 16, 17-year-old journal entries. But I remember writing out that I didn't know if I just wanted to stay numb to life, or, like, which is worse, to stay numb or to actually feel everything, because I
think
didn't.
It's really an age thing. Yeah. I think most of us do that.
But I don't think it is just an age thing. I think it's...
Maybe.
It could be. I think it's what you're going through in life. Yeah.
It is a safe place.
And you find your escape. Yeah. It's like escapism, almost.
Yeah. And I think that's what the alcohol did. But I was really shocked to, wake up at 39 and say, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. So there's got to be a lot of people around our communities that are, saying, maybe I shouldn't drink so much. Maybe I, shouldn't medicate or whatever.
Do you think even Christian people tend to numb
absolutely.
themselves?
Somehow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are not. I mean, you can numb yourself in a television.
Yeah.
It's nice
Video
to have,
games, television,
yes,
Facebook.
it's whatever. So I do think
me.
it's something that we need to pay attention to, and just realize when you all of a sudden aware of it, that it does pop up. But
I feel kind of called out because I kind of do that.
Oh.
I don't doom scroll, but...
Oh, I don't do... Well, I do news scroll, so maybe...
At least you're educating yourself. I mean, I guess...
I don't think this is a bad thing. I would rather read about I would rather read Bloomberg. What is the moral to the story? What are the moral to emotions? I'm
always asked this question. Renee, what's the moral to the story?
What is the moral to the story?
God created emotions, and it's how they're used. It's not emotions owning you. And I think realizing that, I think even realizing too that, like, if God can redeem your life, he can renew your mind.
Yes,
I
he
think we're called to
can.
that.
Yes.
You
Say that
know.
again, though.
I don't remember exactly how I just said it.
Well, so if God can redeem
Renew
your
your
life,
he can renew your mind. And I think a
Yes.
lot of people don't believe that. They believe, oh well, this is, again, it's learned behavior, how they've grown up, how they've always reacted to things, how they've always felt, and they think, oh, this is permanent, and they don't see either a way out, which I've been there, done that. Like, really was in a place last year where I thought, I will not get over this. Like,
Yeah.
this is permanent. It's in my head. But I think having the question too, like, what if there's another way, which I see in a
Which is
holy, divinely
nice.
healing kind of
And
way.
I do think that's God saying,
Yeah.
hey, I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm here with you.
I feel like I'm talking so hard, and I
gripping
smell like
my-
no, I smell like coffee because I
It's
forget
really
I'm sipping
okay.
moral coffee and not tea.
No,
Because
no, but I think that's the way
it's-
the Lord is reaching you.
yeah, we got nervous. Our editor walked in.
I know.
just kidding.
It's just so scary.
Look
when
how
you walk-
great the
It
office
feels
looks.
like
Like
having
chairs and art everywhere.
it feels like
and
having
feet
the
and
teacher hair
charcuterie.
after a really hard day.
It's like Dasha watching when we're dancing
Yes.
and they do a thingamajig.
and not like that. It feels like
I feel
emotional because we were
towards Dylan.
no emotional because we've had an emotional day.
We did. We had an emotional day with the memory cards,
and we
but
had
it's
to be
fine now.
logical.
Yeah,
No, we're all good now.
yeah. I should stop recording though.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to say though? This is way too close. That was kind of like intimate.
No.
Okay.